have some examples? Because a lot of the people on this call and the people that I help are mostly smaller agencies, so they're trying to do everything. Have you got some case studies or some examples of smaller businesses that have done, have got some interesting examples of how they've used chatbots or AI in their businesses that the guys might find interesting?
Sure. One of the things that I'd probably say to people is that don't necessarily think that it has to be in volume scenarios that you use AI. With solutions that are becoming more cloud-based and more of a SaaS type solution that are out there, where it's subscription-based models that you can use, the cost. And we'll get into ROIs a bit later, I'm sure, but the cost is quite small now. So it becomes quite effective to use AI. So to answer your question specifically, we've done lots of volume work whereby, we've screened 2,500 candidates in 2 or 3 days, and we've whittled that down to about 950 interviews, and the recruiter has conducted those, which is a lot. And in actual fact, you would probably use video interviewing techniques and tools now to enhance that. But then we whittled it down to 750 employees. So that's a good example of a large volume one. But what are your types of users and clients that you have, and people who might be on this call, are much smaller? We've worked it out that really if you're doing about 10 screens a week for a particular type of role, it's more cost effective to use a chatbot or some sort of tool like that to be able to conduct the actual check. So there's a good case example where it's quite small and we drill it down to that end. But also some of your clients will have databases of 10, 20, 30,000 people on the database. Some of the big ones, they have up to about 1 million, but, if in those small numbers, it's still very difficult to reach out to candidates, to re-engage with them and basically cleanse your database. It's a very challenging thing. Whereas these sorts of tools and chatbots is one example, but there are other automation tools that can reach out to your database and start to update the information. It may be relative to a particular job that you've got, or in actual fact, it may be of a general nature and you're just wanting to cleanse the database and update it. So there's a couple examples of how even small clients can use this technology.
Yeah, so we're talking about really speeding up the process. We're not talking about replacing the recruitment process of connecting, engaging. We're just shortcutting that process to help you get to the right people to then have those conversations. Would that be a fair?
I think what will happen is we'll see a specialization start to happen in the industry, whereby it will be recognized that low-value transactions are better off to be handled by some sort of automation tool.
Yes, okay.
And it's more reliable. It gets done to everyone, so everyone gets touched with respect to this. There's no black holes that candidates fall into.
Right.
So I think from that perspective, the role of a recruiter will change. It will be much more of where it's more complex, where they can add value to the relationship with either the candidate or the client, where it's more about specific nuances of a job and how do I match the cultural fit to some extent, as well as the skills and competencies of a particular job to a particular individual. Great. AI is getting better and better at that. There's a couple of things that need to happen. We may find that the technology gets there faster than attitudes. So whilst it may be you technically able to do that, some people may not be comfortable with doing that. They want to actually sit in front of a human and engage with them. So what we try and do, and I think generally the industry is trying to do now, is it's a slow process. But there will be a bit of a changing of the guard, changing of the roles that will happen, and we will see recruiters being more specific in what they do.
Right. And what I like about what just in listening to you as well is this isn't like a one size fits all. It's let's look at your business, map it through and see what those conversations are that you're having, what it is that you need to know, and then building the AI around that. Is that, again, I don't want to be saying something that's incorrect. Is that a fair thing to say?
No, I would agree with you 100%. Okay. So you would need to look at your workflow processes, understand where the bottlenecks are, maybe in your workflow processes, understand where the skills shortages may be.
Yep.
Sometimes it's client driven and they want particular types of assessments conducted. You know, there's that element to it. But it may be simply types of jobs that you're working with. If you're in the hospitality space, often there are events that you've got to recruit for, so you get high volumes coming in all of a sudden. Might be campaigns with respect to a contact center. You know, recently here in Australia, as a result of coronavirus, and a lot of offshoring was happening with our contact centers, but they were also shut down. So a lot of the big telcos and a lot of the big insurance and banking organizations have pulled that back into Australia. So there's been a real rush on trying to get contact center staff. And so these sorts of, you know, peaks and troughs.
So Pete, sorry to just interrupt you there on that point. If somebody suddenly has to go from, you know, this kind of flow to this kind of flow, how long would it take them to implement that and then get that live in their business to run those campaigns?
Yeah, it really depends on which software platform we're talking about.
Okay.
But as a general rule, some of them can literally be, especially if you're taking on a fairly lean product that they've got rather than the more complex version of it, you could start up in a matter of hours. Other times it might take a few days. It just really depends.
Okay, so not long.
No, it a lot depends on what level of automation sometimes that you want at the back end, because that's where you start to have to create some bespoke solutions. Because yes, for example, if we were talking chatbots, yes, you could create a chatbot very easily that could have a conversation with someone and captures data. The real essence or the efficiencies come with all of that is, what do you do with that data?
Yes, okay.
And that depends on your workflow processes. So your people who are listening today, they would need to look at what their workflow processes are and then understand, well, what can we automate? Yeah. What is our applicant tracking system that we have? What does that do? What can we supplement what it does? How can we automate getting information we've captured into that database in that automated way?
Cool.